Entire school districts are canceling the test, and some are just one-off schools that are canceling the test. I was signed up to take the test in March, and every test center in New York City was closed except my test center. So a lot of people are asking what's different when I take the SAT. The things that are different are mostly the same safety procedures that are in place in most states in the United States right now. They encourage you to wear gloves, bring hand sanitizer, anything else that makes you feel safe. You definitely have to wear a mask or a face covering while you're taking the test. And test proctors, I have seen, we brought some kids to a test in Hoboken in August because there were no seats in New York City. And the kids there, everybody was very strict about the 6 feet rule, wearing masks, all of that stuff. We gave our kids hand sanitizer, masks, and gloves so that they knew that they would be safe. I don't know if that's available at every test location. Probably some test locations, they pass that out if you don't have it, but others, I don't know that they necessarily do. So I'd bring your own. Other than the 6 foot restriction and just sort of being hyper vigilant in the hallways about not getting too close to people, taking the test is not particularly different than it has been at other times. They do ask you a series of survey questions, sort of like when you go to the doctor, and before they book the appointment, they ask you, have you been coughing? Are you experiencing shortness of breath? Do you have a fever? Do you know anybody who's tested positive for COVID? Have you been in another state that's at high risk recently? So the College Board is doing all of those same things. Besides those kinds of extra precautions, my sense and the sense of the kids who I brought to the test in August is just that this is like taking the SAT except with a mask on. So not that much has changed in that sense. One thing that has changed, though, is test centers' proclivities in terms of canceling the test. If you have signed up for a test and found out at the last minute that it was canceled, there are a couple things that might have happened. First thing to know, test centers close individually based on how they are feeling about administering the test. For instance, we had kids taking the test in Baltimore. One of the test centers closed a couple days before the test. There was only one test center in Baltimore for the August test. And so if you were at the test center that had closed and you were able to get a free spot at the other test center, good for you. But if not, you had to maybe go to Baltimore County, see if there was a seat there. And I doubt that all of the kids at the closed test center were able to reschedule at an open test center just because it wasn't enough time. Usually in those situations, they'll give you the option of doing a makeup test or they'll refund your money. So it's not like your money is gone, but if you've prepped for a specific test particularly hard and you've timed that prep, so you've taken all of the practice tests leading up to it and you've been working with your tutor on a specific time plan that leads up to a given test, a wrench could be thrown in the works at any time and you have no control over that. Test centers even were canceling the day of the test and not notifying their students. I had another student in Boston who showed up at the test center at 7:30 and there were no signs up that said the test was canceled, but there were also no people there. So he walked around the building for literally an hour and he texted me and I looked it up online and I was like, oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. It looks like your test center was canceled at the last minute. But he had no way of knowing that. But he literally just walked around the building for an hour. Like, my heart went out to him because he didn't want to leave because he thought, maybe I screwed up. Maybe I'm confused. Maybe somebody's going to pop out a door and be like, all right, next people come in. It's frustrating when that happens. Some entire school districts are canceling the test and some are just one-off schools that are canceling the test. I was signed up to take the test in March and every test center in New York City was closed except my test center. So everybody else wasn't able to take the test in March, but we could. I think one of the frustrations that people are having is that it feels very unequal and it's very difficult to predict who's going to cancel what when. And all of those things are true and all those things are valid. I was reading an article in the New York Times just last night that suggested the pandemic might be over sooner than people have been predicting in the past because the task force that is working on creating the vaccine has been pushing ahead pretty relentlessly. And they think that there are likely going to be probably 2 vaccine candidates by the end of 2020. If that's true, then that makes us a lot safer a lot sooner. But if you're trying to take the SATs this year, that can still be complicated. So the next time that the SAT is going to be offered is November 7th. There are going to be 2 more test administrations in 2020, November 7th and December 5th. They're usually the first Saturday of every month and Sunday if you're Sabbath observant. If you are Sabbath observant, obviously you need to have either registered previously as Sabbath observant or fill out the form. If you don't have any idea what I'm talking about, generally go to your place of worship and they should have a form that you can fill out that designates you for the Sabbath observant test. For instance, I've had Jewish Sabbath observant students and what they do is at their synagogue, there's like a specific place that they go to get this waiver and it's already signed by the rabbi that says this student is Sabbath observant and can't take the test on a Saturday and needs to take it on a Sunday. All of that should be exactly the same. We don't know anything about the 2021 test dates. Traditionally, the SAT has not started testing again in the winter until March. Usually there's a March actual test, an April school day administration, a May first Saturday of the month actual administration, and a June first Saturday of the month actual administration. Now, the SAT, by adding the September test this year, added a date that they had never had before. So it would not surprise me if the SAT was going to add more test dates in the spring. But of course, that's all pending how people are feeling with COVID, herd immunity, vaccine, and whether or not the SAT perceives there to be demand to take more tests. So in terms of you're thinking, okay, I'm signed up for the November 7th or the December 5th test. What do I bring? What's my checklist? It's actually not different from your previous checklist, except that you need to bring a mask. Let me go over what you'll need. So the night before the test, you want to make sure you pack your backpack, get 8 hours of sleep, set your alarm, and budget your travel time to the test center. So if you're taking mass transit, make sure to add 15 minutes because you're going there on a Saturday morning. And in New York City, the trains have stopped running between 1 and 5. So you're going to hit one of the early trains if you're going to get there by 7:30. And I had a kid who is taking the August test who waited literally a half hour for a train to come. Be aware, it might take a little longer. If you're getting there in a car, that's awesome. But remember, if you hit an accident, you don't want to make that the reason that you are not on time to your SAT. So like really basic stuff. What goes into your backpack? Great question. Make sure you bring your printed admission ticket, photo ID, digital watch, scientific calculator, non-mechanical number 2 pencils. You will not be able to take the test with a mechanical pencil. And 2 things that I normally suggest, a water bottle and high protein, low sugar snacks. I think it will depend on the testing center how strict they are in adhering to guidelines. I know my kids have taken, and I personally have taken tests at test centers that are all over the map in terms of strictness. You're not supposed to be able to drink during the SAT, but I definitely have been in rooms where the proctor didn't care and kids were drinking water throughout the test. You're also not supposed to be able to eat except in the hallway. I have read a couple things that imply that the College Board is not letting you bring snacks to the SAT, but I haven't read anything official from the College Board that says that. So I would still bring the snacks and try to eat them. And if your proctor says no, then don't. Having a snack, especially between sections 1 and 2, that big break between reading and the rest of the test, you will be very tired after 65 minutes of reading and after having done all of the sitting and bubbling and filling out and signing of statements that you have to do at the beginning part of the test. So the thing that I think is most important to bring is a snack. And remember, you want to bring high protein, low sugar. Things without sugar are great. I would bring maybe a hard-boiled egg or some unsalted nuts. My kids are always like, Alyssa, unsalted nuts are disgusting. And I'm like, yes, but they don't make you thirsty. On test day, what do you want to do? First, eat breakfast. Second, leave home early. Remember, you want to give yourself that 15 minutes of buffer time. And if you can give yourself a little bit more, that is better. I would much prefer to be standing out in front of the school, waiting for an administrator to let me in, than wondering if I'm going to make it as I roll in at 7:59. Remember to dress in layers. I have taken tests where it is hot as all get out or it is freezing. So when I go, I usually wear a tank top, a t-shirt, some kind of sweatshirt or sweater over it, and then a jacket that is thin enough that I could wear if I had to take the test the whole time. So like not a puff coat, but maybe a leather jacket or a denim jacket that I could put on over it, and make sure that you're wearing warm stuff on your legs too. I generally wear ultra warm hiking leggings, which I know sounds crazy, but it can get really cold in there. If you're wearing layers, that way if it's really hot, you can take everything off. If it's really cold, keep everything on. The other thing to remember when you're taking the test, day of the test, is use the breaks. You will have a 10-minute break between sections 1 and 2. Use that time to go to the bathroom and have a snack and drink water. You may say, I don't have to go to the bathroom. That's okay. Go anyway. This is like when your mother says, I know you don't have to go to the bathroom, but go anyway because we're going to be in the car for 5 hours. Because if you listen to her, then you won't have to pee along the way, right? So go to the bathroom between sections 1 and 2 because the worst thing that happens is you're in the middle of section 2 and you're like, oh my God, now I have to go to the bathroom and now I don't want to leave because I'm going to lose time in the test and all I can think about is that I have to pee. Don't do that to yourself. So go to the bathroom, please, please, please. At your breaks, you're going to have a break between sections 1 and 2 and a second break between sections 3 and 4. Sections 1 and 2, the break will be 10 minutes. Sections 3 and 4, the break will be 5 minutes.